You clicked on this video, which means you're probably curious about what the hell a tank dating sim would look like. And here it is. Now I know what you're thinking. Logano, where are my dummy thick anime bitches at? I promise those will come later. But for now, let's delve into this game's basic structure. Now this game is probably going to play like a combination of Hoonipop and We Play Tanks. You're probably wondering how the fuck that's gonna work. And I can't blame you. It would probably best be explained from the beginning, so here we go. So it all started when I was making a tank model in Blender based on the Leopard 2A4, which looks like this. I started off not intending to make a game, just making a model based on a funny idea my friends and I had a couple years ago. Now, 2 years ago, I wasn't half as good at using Blender as I am now. I had made a Leopard 2A4 model back then, and it was not much of a looker. This was part of a tank dating sim that I'd roped like half a dozen of my friends into working on before promptly running the project into the ground. I'm not gonna lie, the demo that we had made was total ass and needed a lot of work. It also looked awful. This got me thinking, what if I finished that tank dating sim? I opened the project, looked at some of the code, and decided I had no idea what the fuck was going on in there. So I created a new Unity project and got started on a basic tank controller. In We Play Tanks, your character controls like a top-down character with regular up, down, left, and right controls, which is exactly what I wanted for this. I then promptly spent almost 3 evenings in Unity trying to get the character to rotate the way it does in We Play Tanks, and thank God, I finally figured it out. I added a boost ability to go fast, and after that was sorted, I started on the turret movement, which relies on a cursor location input to raycast to a plane that was attached to the player so it wouldn't look up or down, which is complicated AF. Next I started working on the primary attack, the tank shell. This bad boy shoots out and will ricochet off of any walls it hits. It explodes after 1 ricochet or if it hits the player. Easy peasy. After that I did the secondary attack, which is the missile. This one is like those fast shots from We Play Tanks. Ricochets twice and is, well, fast. It also explodes, which is handy for breakable environmental objects. Using my newfound projectile summoning knowledge, I decided to add hats. Critical feature, really. I had to program a variable to change the hats and thought, wow, what if I used that to allow the player to change weapons? So I proceeded to program a system that would allow players to switch between weapons as well as having both primary and secondary weapons. Switch the missile to be another primary weapon. Thinking about the larger scope of the game compared to We Play Tanks, I thought it might be nice to have more than a single health point, so I added a health bar and stamina bar to the player. I also added some health pickups. Now that we're fresh out of secondary weapons, I decided I should add heat-seeking missiles. But what would those heat-seeking missiles lock onto, you might ask? Introducing enemies. Based off of the Canadian military AVGP, I whipped up a quick model in Blender, which I think looks pretty accurate. I programmed a very basic AI that would basically follow the player and be intimidating before iterating that a bit further. They can also look at the player and fire shells. Now I wasn't quite happy with this basic shit, so I decided to iterate on it for like a week before I was quote-unquote happy with it. And I'm probably going to be working on that a bit more in the future. Now that the player had a target, I added the heat-seeking missile, and this puppy doesn't ricochet, but will basically target the closest enemy when it's instantiated and move towards it. Now at this point I was like, this is too damn easy, give me some hard shit to program. So I proceeded to start setting up the passive ability system and programmed in a laser pointer to help the player line up their shots in game, which still doesn't work half of the time. This son of a bitch took me like 5 days to get sort of right, and to this day I still haven't touched that script, even though I need to fix a couple things. Also added a main menu, which literally just has a play button on it, no biggie. I got some of my friends to try it out, then added more stuff to the menu, like the ability to pick your weapons, passive abilities, hats, etc. The problem with the system is that it didn't save your data. So I went on the Unity Assets store and tried a free asset called Save is Easy for this, and after a week I concluded that saving was not, in fact, easy, and just moved on to manually programming a binary encoder myself to save data. Surprisingly, doing this was easier than using the plugin, and I know exactly what everything does, so huge bonus. At this point, I just felt like the game didn't look all too great. No matter what I did to the models and materials, it just didn't quite look like it belonged. So I ended up modeling a new, more cartoony player model, which fit the vibe a lot more. Specifically, it fit in a lot more with the movement style, as turning the cube is way more natural than turning a long-ass rectangle. After testing it in game, I decided to redo the enemy as well, and was very happy with the results. The AI was really bugging me at this point, so I went in and reprogrammed the whole thing. The enemy will now orbit around the player when the player is within a certain range, which feels way more natural. Coming to think of it, by the time they actually start orbiting around you in game, you'd be dead, so hey! The weapon selection by this point was kinda lacking, so I added a shotgun and machine gun to the roster for the primary weapons, as well as teleportation, invisibility, and a force field to the secondary weapons. I also started adding some sound effects to the game and a sound slider for the different effects. At this point, we're nearing the present day. Recently I made another enemy type, the turret, This reuses a lot of code from the AVGP and was honestly the easiest thing to model so far. I also programmed the enemies to lead their shots, which was surprisingly simple. I separated the enemies out to different tiers: brown tier, gray tier, and black tier, each being a bit smarter and more resilient than lower tiers. Now, if you're still here, you're probably wondering where the anime bitches are at. To be completely honest with you, this was one of the things I was putting off for a while in development, as there would be a brand new thing to set up from complete scratch. So I did some looking around on YouTube for tutorials, and I didn't really find anything that stuck with me until I found a video detailing a dialogue system called Ink. I was a bit skeptical since I was burned by Save as Easy, but I decided to give it a shot anyway. Unlike Save as Easy, this worked amazingly well. Their documentation is phenomenal, and if you ever need a dialogue system, I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's completely free, open source, and it just works. I made a demo conversation and kind of just added the systems as they went on, with basically no major issues. Also, no, I didn't make this drawing, I just commissioned it from Fiverr when we were working on the original version like 2 years ago, so I'm just using it as a placeholder. My dialogue system supports names, scrolling text, 3 characters, as well as backgrounds, foregrounds, and full screen images. Basically exactly what you would need in a dating sim. I'll probably be adding more over time though. I added a bunch of boring stuff like making a way for these conversations to be triggered in game, and a few different modes: pause screen, loading screen, some minor improvements, and cars that can be shoved around and destroyed. Now you're pretty much up to date. I'm not sure how the format will be going forward or when the next video will be made, so I hope you enjoyed this one. I really appreciate all my subscribers, and if you choose to subscribe, you won't be disappointed. Join my Discord as well. Links to all my stuff's in the description. Thanks.